Today, we will compile some of the world's most gruesome and bizarre burial outdated customs. We begin with a very familiar name: eating the ashes of the dead. This custom originated from the Yanomami tribe, a community of approximately 40,000 people living in the Amazon rainforest along the border between Venezuela and Brazil. Because they live in the rainforest and rarely interact with the outside world, the people here live a very wild life, completely dependent on nature and agriculture, purely hunting, gathering, slash-and-burn farming, and growing corn, potatoes, and cassava. Particularly noteworthy is the custom of eating the ashes of the dead. It's not simply a matter of picking them up and eating them. It involves many lengthy stages and procedures. When a person dies, the body is wrapped in leaves and placed deep in the forest, far from the tribe's dwelling place. They will allow insects to eat away the soft tissues, a process that usually takes 30 to 45 days. After only the skeleton remains, relatives will collect it for cremation. At the same time, all personal belongings of the deceased will also be burned, as they believe that belongings can harbor evil spirits. Only respected members of the tribe and men are allowed to perform this ritual. After cremation, the bones are left to cool, then the villagers grind them into a fine powder. This powder is stored in dried gourds and placed in the most prominent place in the communal house. A year later, on the anniversary of the death, the ashes are brought out and used to prepare food for the entire village. Of course, they won't eat it directly, but will incorporate it into traditional dishes. The most common is mixing it with mashed bananas and cooking it into a soup for everyone to share. The rest is placed in a long bamboo tube, then one person blows forcefully into the nose of the other to inhale deeply. This must be incredibly mind-blowing. For them, only then can the deceased truly be with their family and village. Next, live burial is considered one of the most brutal and haunting burial rituals in human history, especially in feudal China. They buried living people alongside the dead. The purpose was to ensure the deceased continued to have servants and care for them and live comfortably in the afterlife, or to ward off evil spirits, or to protect the tomb. Those who were buried alive were usually concubines and beautiful women, but if a concubine gave birth to a son, she would be spared. Slaves, servants, and even children were used to build the tomb. During the Ming Dynasty, hanging was the most common method, followed by poisoning or being tied up and buried alive. Even more horrifying, parts of their bodies, often the scalp, would be cut and mercury poured over them, causing mercury poisoning until they died. The practice during the reign of Qin Shi Huang was even more extreme. This is considered a prime example of the barbaric custom of burying people alive, with the number of people buried alive being so large that it's impossible to accurately count them. When Qin Shi Huang died, a large number of concubines and beautiful women from the vassal states he conquered were buried with him. Furthermore, most of those involved in building the tomb were also buried alive inside to maintain absolute secrecy about the location and structure of the structure. The secrets were eventually unearthed by their descendants. When unearthed, scientists discovered that the leg bones of the female weren't straight because they were trapped in an airless environment, leading to struggling, despairing, contorting, writhing, and suffering before disintegrating. The most horrifying example is probably from the Shang Dynasty, where archaeological evidence of human sacrifice is terrifyingly abundant. After a period of restriction from the Han to the Song Dynasty, Zhuyanzhang revived the practice of human sacrifice during the Ming Dynasty. According to his will, about 46 concubines who had never given birth were forced to follow him, and these women are referred to in historical records with the euphemistic names Heavenly Maidens. They were brought into a room with chairs called Grand Tutor chairs, on which long ropes, about 1.3 meters long, were hung. Those who lacked the courage to hang themselves were directly forced to do so by eunuchs. This incident caused chaos and mournful cries throughout the imperial court at the time. This barbaric custom continued through many Min emperors and was only completely eradicated from history during the reign of Qin Shi Emperor in 1673. Mukbang of corpses. The Fore people in Papua New Guinea bury their dead using the method of cannibalism. At the funeral, they bury the body for several days, then dig it up, cut it into pieces, and cook it into dishes. Men eat the hard parts like legs and arms. Children and women are given the more nutritious brain. This direct mukbang of their own kind causes them to contract diseases like Kuru and mad cow disease, causing brain damage and almost certainly leading to death. However, after a long period of eating brains, the Fore tribe has updated itself with a new version. Now they have antibodies against these diseases and other brain-related illnesses such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Hopefully, people with Alzheimer's will not watch this video. The Tower of Silence, also known as the Dakhma, is an open-air cylindrical structure used for sky burial rituals to handle the bodies of the deceased. Dakhmas are usually built on hilltops or low mountains, far from populated areas. The tower is cylindrical in shape, with a nearly flat top divided into 3 concentric circles. The outermost circle is for men, the middle circle for women, and the innermost circle for children. The body is laid face up, feet facing the tower, and only specialized body carriers are allowed into the ceremonial area. After scavenging birds like vultures and crows have devoured the flesh, the remaining skeletons are exposed to the sun and wind until they turn white. This process can take from 1 to several years. Finally, the bones are collected and placed in a deep pit in the center of the tower. There, the bones gradually decompose under the influence of lime or natural acids such as rainwater. To minimize pollution, a filter made of charcoal and sand is added. They believed that corpses were unclean, easily susceptible to demonic possession as soon as the soul left the body. Therefore, exposing the corpses on the high tower to the sun and letting birds peck at the flesh was a way to purify the decomposition process and prevent evil spirits from spreading. This was also seen as a way to protect sacred elements. They considered earth, water, and fire to be sacred. They would not bury the dead to avoid polluting the land, would not throw them into rivers to avoid polluting the water, and would not cremate them to avoid contaminating the sacred fire. In Iran, this custom gradually abandoned the practice from the beginning of the 20th century due to urbanization and changing social views. The famous Yaz Tower ceased operation in 1974. Furthermore, due to the declining vulture population, they were forced to switch to burials in coffins lined with stone or cement. The purpose remained the same, to prevent the corpses from coming into direct contact with the earth. The Sati custom. This is a horrifying practice in Indian spiritual and social life. The name Sati comes from the goddess Sati, who self-immolated to protest her father's disrespect towards her husband, the god Shiva. She vowed to remain Shiva's wife in the next life and was later reborn as Parvati to rekindle their love. Hindus admire this fidelity and emulate her actions. However, there is also a theory that the Sati custom was introduced to prevent wives from poisoning their husbands in order to marry another lover. Initially, Sati was mainly practiced by the Kshatriya class, the warrior aristocracy of the time, but later spread to the lower classes and developed into an extreme cultural practice. In theory, suicide following one's husband's death is voluntary, intended to prove a woman's fidelity, and was once considered a measure of virtue in Indian women. When a husband dies, the wife sits or lies beside his body on the funeral pyre and is burned alive. However, in reality, this act is more coercive, as refusal would lead to extreme contempt and discrimination, affecting not only the wife, but also her entire family. Therefore, in some places, wives are forced to perform sati even if they resist. Because of its inhumanity, this practice was banned by the British colonial government in 1829 at the suggestion of Indian reformers. More recently, in 2002, A 65-year-old woman named Kutu Bai performed Sati at her husband's funeral, stepping onto the funeral pyre in front of the entire village. However, there is conflicting information regarding this event. Regarding her family, her sons asserted that despite their attempts to dissuade her, she was determined to dress in her finest clothes and ascend the funeral pyre. However, numerous complaints alleged that she was forced and dragged onto the pyre by her husband's relatives. Some witnesses believed the pyre spontaneously combusted due to divine intervention. Due to the extremely serious nature of the incident, police arrested and charged 15 people with coercing Miss Bai, including 2 of her sons who were prosecuted for taking their mother's life to seize their father's inheritance. Police claimed that one of the sons lit the pyre for their father and murdered his mother as well. Contrary to the nationwide outrage, the villagers expressed joy and pride in Ms. Bai's actions, as it had been half a century since a woman in the village had performed Sati, and they believed her death would help end the prolonged drought in the area. From this, we can see that this Sati outdated custom is essentially a disguised religious practice, but in reality, it is heavily influenced by the Indian mentality of disrespecting and discriminating against women. And those are some of the gruesome and bizarre burial customs we've collected. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any videos. Thank you, and see you again.